I thought my wedding day was ruined when my fiancé's family humiliated me in front of 200 guests on that $1 million yacht. But when those Air Force jets suddenly roared overhead in perfect formation, everyone's jaws dropped. They had no idea who I really was. Before I tell you how I went from wedding disaster to the most shocking reveal of my life, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Trust me, you'll want to see how this story ends. Let's dive in. My name is Serenity, and I never thought I'd be the kind of woman getting married on a luxury yacht. Growing up in a small town in Ohio, my biggest dreams involved flying planes, not floating on million-dollar boats. But love has a funny way of changing your entire world, doesn't it? When I met Brandon at a coffee shop 2 years ago, I was working as a flight instructor at a local airport. He was this charming guy with kind eyes who seemed genuinely interested in learning about aviation. What I didn't know then was that his family owned one of the largest shipping companies on the East Coast. Brandon never mentioned the money, the mansions, or the fact that his mother expected him to marry someone from their social circle. I kept my military background quiet too, not because I was ashamed of it, but because I wanted a fresh start. 12 years of service, 3 deployments, and more memories than I cared to share with someone I was just getting to know. When people heard Air Force, they either treated me like some kind of superhero or like I was damaged goods. I just wanted to be seen as Serenity, the woman who loved flying and happened to fall for a guy who made her laugh. The engagement was magical. Brandon proposed during a sunset flight I was giving him, right there in the cockpit of a small Cessna. He said he wanted to be part of my world, the one place where I felt most like myself. I should have known then that his family would never understand. Planning the wedding became complicated fast. Brandon's mother, Catherine, insisted on handling everything. The venue had to be their family yacht, the Golden Horizon. The guest list grew from 50 people to over 200, most of whom I'd never met. Every decision went through Catherine first, and every suggestion I made was politely dismissed. "Darling," she'd say with that fake smile, "you're not used to events of this scale. Let me handle the details." What she really meant was that I wasn't good enough for her son, but she was too polite to say it directly. The red flags started early. Catherine would ask innocent-sounding questions about my family, my background, my father's business. I told her Dad worked in aircraft maintenance, which was technically true. He spent 30 years as a master sergeant, the best aircraft mechanic the Air Force ever had. But I didn't elaborate, and she didn't push. Yet. My guest list was embarrassingly small. A few close friends, my parents, and my brother. That was it. No extended family drama, no college sorority sisters, no coworkers from some corporate job, just the people who actually mattered to me. Catherine made sure everyone noticed the difference. How refreshing, she'd tell her friends, to meet someone so uncomplicated. The night before the wedding, I stood on the deck of that beautiful yacht, watching the sun set over the harbor. The Golden Horizon was incredible, I'll give them that. 150 feet of pure luxury with marble countertops, crystal chandeliers, and enough space to host a small country's diplomatic dinner. But I felt like an imposter in my own wedding. Brandon found me there, looking worried. "Mom's been asking more questions about your family," he said carefully. "She hired someone to look into your background." My stomach dropped. "What kind of questions?" "Just, she wants to make sure we're compatible, financially, socially." He couldn't meet my eyes. "She's worried you might be after the family money." I should have told him everything right then. About my service record, my decorations, the real reason I left the military. Instead, I just nodded and told him everything would be fine. How wrong I was. The morning of the wedding dawned perfect. Clear skies, calm waters, gentle breeze. I put on my dress, a simple but elegant gown in cream silk that made me feel beautiful for the first time in months. My mom helped with my hair, tears in her eyes. "You look just like you did in your dress blues," she whispered, so proud and strong. I wished I felt strong. Mostly, I felt like I was walking into battle without my armor. The ceremony was set for sunset on the main deck. 200 guests in their finest clothes, champagne flowing, photographers capturing every moment. I walked down that aisle with my father, past faces I didn't recognize, toward a future I wasn't sure I wanted anymore. Brandon looked handsome in his tuxedo, but I could see the tension in his jaw. Catherine sat in the front row, looking like a queen holding court. She wore white, by the way. White? To her son's wedding. Should have been another red flag, but I was too nervous to think straight. The ceremony started beautifully. The captain began with the traditional words about love and commitment. The sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. For a moment, I forgot about all the politics and remembered why I loved this man. Then Catherine stood up. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying clearly over the water. "Before we continue, I have something important to share." My heart stopped. Brandon looked confused. The captain paused, clearly unsure what to do. 200 pairs of eyes turned toward Catherine as she pulled out a manila folder. "I believe in transparency," she announced, "especially when welcoming someone new into our family. So I took the liberty of having a thorough background check done on our bride." The blood drained from my face. Brandon stepped toward his mother. "Mom, what are you doing?" "I'm protecting our family, darling." She opened the folder like she was presenting evidence in court. "It seems our dear Serenity hasn't been entirely truthful about her background." The guests leaned forward, sensing drama. Someone actually pulled out their phone to start recording. I stood there in my wedding dress, feeling smaller by the second. "First," Catherine continued, "her family isn't in business as she claimed. Her father is a mechanic, a blue-collar worker. Nothing wrong with honest work, of course, but hardly the partnership we expected for Brandon." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw my parents in the third row, Dad's face red with embarrassment, Mom reaching for his hand. "Furthermore," Catherine's voice grew stronger, more confident, "Miss Serenity has no college degree, no family money, no connections that could benefit our company. She's been working as a flight instructor at a small local airport, hardly the sophisticated woman she presented herself to be." The humiliation burned through me like fire. Every word was designed to cut, to make me look like a fraud, a gold digger, a nobody who had somehow tricked their precious son. "Finally," Catherine delivered her killing blow. "She's been deliberately vague about her past, claiming her father worked in aircraft maintenance. What she didn't mention is that she's been hiding a stint in the military. Not exactly the background we expected for the future Mrs. Brandon Whitmore." The crowd erupted in whispers. I heard fragments. "Military? Kept it secret? What else is she hiding?" Brandon stared at me like he'd never seen me before. "Is this true?" he asked quietly. I opened my mouth to explain, but Catherine wasn't finished. "Brandon, darling, I know you care for this girl, but surely you can see she's been deceiving you from the beginning. This is exactly the kind of opportunistic behavior we need to protect against. Our family has worked for generations to build what we have. We can't let it be compromised by someone who won't even be honest about who she is." The yacht fell silent except for the gentle lapping of waves against the hull. I stood there in my cream silk dress, feeling like I was on trial. My few friends looked horrified. My parents looked devastated. Brandon looked torn between the woman he loved and the family that controlled his future. "Serenity," he said carefully, "why didn't you tell me about the military? Why keep it secret?" Before I could answer, Catherine jumped in. "Because she knew we'd ask questions she couldn't answer. What kind of discharge did she receive? What kind of record? We know nothing about this woman's real past, Brandon. Nothing." One of the guests, an older man I'd never met, spoke up from the back. "Maybe we should let the girl explain herself." "Explain what?" Catherine snapped. "More lies? More omissions? How can we trust anything she says now?" I felt the walls closing in. 200 strangers judging me, questioning my integrity, my motives, my worth. Brandon wavered. I could see it. His mother's words were poison, but they were working. "I think," Brandon said slowly, painfully, "we need to postpone this until we can sort things out." The crowd murmured approval. Catherine smiled triumphantly. I felt my world collapsing. "Brandon," I whispered, "please." "Let me explain." "How can I trust your explanations now?" His voice broke. "You've had 2 years to tell me the truth." That's when I heard it. A distant rumble, barely audible over the sound of my breaking heart, but my ears were trained to recognize that sound anywhere. The rumble grew louder. Conversations stopped. Heads turned toward the sky. 4 F-16 fighting falcons appeared on the horizon, flying in perfect diamond formation, beautiful, deadly, precise. They were flying low, lower than they should be in civilian airspace, heading directly toward us. The crowd gasped as the jets roared overhead, so close I could see the pilots in their cockpits. The sound was deafening, thrilling, impossible to ignore. Everyone on that yacht craned their necks to watch as the formation banked left and circled around for another pass. "What the hell?" someone shouted. The jets came back even lower this time, slower, more deliberate. I knew that formation, knew that precision. My heart hammered against my ribs as memories flooded back. Catherine looked annoyed at the interruption. "Some kind of military exercise, I suppose. Can we get back to—" "No." My voice cut through the noise as the jets faded into the distance. Those weren't random exercises. Everyone turned to stare at me. I felt different suddenly, stronger, like putting on a uniform I'd forgotten I owned. Those were F-16s from the 180th Fighter Wing, Ohio Air National Guard. I stepped forward, my voice growing steadier. "They don't fly formations like that without good reason." Brandon frowned. "How do you know that?" I looked at him, at his mother, at all those judgmental faces. "Because I flew with them for 8 years. Captain Serenity Walsh, call sign, Phoenix. 12 years total service, 3 combat deployments, over 2,000 flight hours." The yacht went dead silent. "The mechanic you mentioned, Catherine? That's Master Sergeant Robert Walsh, 30 years of service, 3 Bronze Stars, and the best aircraft maintenance supervisor the Air Force ever had. He kept pilots like me alive by making sure our planes never failed us." Catherine's face went white. "You wanted to know about my military service? I was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for heroism in combat. I led rescue missions that brought home Americans who wouldn't have made it otherwise. I commanded a squadron of pilots who trusted me with their lives." The older guest who'd spoken up earlier stepped forward. "Captain Walsh? I served in the Navy. I've heard of you, the Kandahar rescue mission." I nodded. "Among others." Brandon stared at me like he was seeing a completely different person. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wanted to be loved for who I am now, not who I used to be. I've seen enough war, enough death. I wanted peace. I wanted normal. I wanted to be the woman who makes you laugh, not the soldier who's killed people to keep others alive." The jets made one more pass, waggling their wings in what I knew was a salute. Someone on my old squad had pulled strings, called in favors, arranged this moment, a reminder of who I really was. "Those men and women up there," I said, pointing at the disappearing aircraft, "they're my family too. They know what honor means. They know what sacrifice looks like. They would never question my integrity because they've seen it tested under fire." Catherine sat down heavily, the folder slipping from her hands. "I didn't lie to you, Brandon. I just didn't tell you everything. Yes, I served my country. Yes, I'm proud of it. And yes, I would do it again if called. But I chose to leave that life behind because I fell in love with a man who made me want something different." I turned to face the crowd, feeling like myself again for the first time in months. "You want to know about my background? I've led missions in hostile territory. I've brought billion-dollar aircraft home safely in storms that would terrify most people. I've held dying soldiers in my arms and promised their families they didn't die alone. I've earned every decoration on my chest through blood, sweat, and sacrifice most of you can't imagine." My voice carried across the water, strong and clear. "But none of that matters if the man I love can't trust me enough to let me explain. If his family thinks service to our country is something to be ashamed of, if they believe money is more important than character." Brandon stepped toward me, his face full of regret. "Serenity, The jets came at exactly the right moment, I continued, to remind me who I am. I'm not some gold digger or social climber. I'm a woman who served her country with honor and chose love over duty, but I won't apologize for either choice. The Navy veteran spoke up again. Ma'am, what you did in Kandahar, that was incredible. 4 pilots brought home alive because you flew into hell to get them. Other guests began to murmur, the story spreading, the reality of who I was sinking in. Catherine looked like she wanted to disappear. Brandon took my hands. I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have stood up for you. You should have asked me directly instead of letting your mother run a background check like I was applying for a job. He nodded, tears in his eyes. You're right. I was a coward. Catherine finally found her voice. I didn't know. I thought... You thought what, exactly? That service members are somehow less worthy? That sacrifice and honor are character flaws? I kept my voice level, professional. Or did you think I was too stupid to deserve your son? I was protecting my family, she whispered. I was protecting the whole country, I replied quietly, including your family. The crowd had completely shifted. Phones were out. But now they were recording my words, sharing the story of the bride who turned out to be a war hero. The shame was transferring from me to Catherine, and I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Brandon squeezed my hands. Will you still marry me? After everything? I looked at him for a long moment, then at his mother, then at all those faces that had judged me so harshly just minutes before. That depends, I said. Can you love a woman who's more than you bargained for? Someone who's seen things you can't imagine and carries responsibilities you might not understand? I want to learn, he said simply. I want to know all of you. As if summoned by his words, the jets made one final pass, higher this time, more ceremonial. A blessing from my old squadron, a reminder that some bonds never break. I smiled and felt like myself again. Then, let's get married. The ceremony continued with a completely different energy. The captain's words about love and commitment hit deeper now, carrying weight they hadn't before. When Brandon slipped the ring on my finger, it felt like he was accepting all of me, not just the parts his family found acceptable. Catherine apologized publicly, her voice shaking with embarrassment, and what I hoped was genuine remorse. The guests who had been whispering about my unworthiness were now talking about bravery and service. The Navy veteran made sure everyone understood exactly what the Distinguished Flying Cross meant, but the moment that mattered most came during our first dance. As the yacht rocked gently under the stars, Brandon held me close and whispered, I'm sorry I almost lost the most incredible woman I've ever met because I was too weak to fight for her. You found your strength when it counted, I replied. That's what matters. As we danced, I thought about those jets disappearing into the night, carrying my old life away one more time. But this time, I wasn't running from who I used to be. I was integrating her into who I was becoming. Sometimes the people who judge us the harshest are the ones who know us the least. My service taught me that real strength isn't about proving yourself to others. It's about knowing your own worth. But I have to admit, having those jets show up at exactly the right moment, that was pretty incredible timing. If this story touched you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories. Share this with someone who needs to remember their own worth today. And in the comments, tell me, have you ever been underestimated by someone who later regretted it? I read every single comment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.